sort of down, but I'm not very good at that because I'm a writer by trade. So,
were you a delegate?
I was an alternate delegate, yes. So I have written a letter to you all that I would be very pleased if I could read to you. I've also got some copies here that I will hand out to everyone. Well, I don't have enough for everybody. So
What district were you a delegate?
CD 32. So I was sent by SD 23 to state convention, and when they redrew the lines, I ended up in CD 32. I used to be in CD 30. I felt more at home there, but now I'm with a bunch of rich people in North Dallas. I'm not one of them. So
what are you trying to say?
So
you're not rich?
we are rich in the blessings of the Lord. We are rich in friendship and character and all the things that matter, and I do believe that. So if you'll bear with me, I'll share my thoughts with you and try not to get too emotional about it. Dear friends and fellow Republicans, let me first express how honored I am to have been sent by all of you to represent SD 23 and CD 32 at the Republican National Convention in Tampa. When I got into Republican politics in 2009, volunteering for Tom Meckler and Melinda Fredericks, first as a blogger, then promoted quickly to message manager, I never imagined that in such a short amount of time I would find myself standing beside my fellow Texans and Republicans from the entire country at the grandest celebration of our party. Too often, people in my age group, I'm 30, I think I look older than that, but think there's nothing they can do, that their voice doesn't count. Well, I've always believed otherwise, and I have all of you to thank for confirming that belief and sending me and many other young people, a couple of guys right here, for instance, newly active in politics, most of us, to Tampa. You have demonstrated a steadfast commitment to the inclusiveness and openness of our party and a real hope for the future of our values and our country. I'm humbled by the vote of confidence so many placed in me, and I am proud to have stood with you and for you in Tampa. Now, with a nod to our favorite Republican outlaw, let me share with you my thoughts on our convention, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here's the good. As Pastor Broden mentioned, Texas is awesome. We came out dressed to the nines. We came out ready to work and to fight and to party. I met great people from all over our state, and despite some divisions among us, I experienced firsthand just how united we all are in spirit and belief. There is simply no place like Texas, and in case any other delegations doubted that before Tampa, they know it now. Texas led the fight to preserve the power of the grassroots in our party, and we all came together, despite our differences, to fight for the voice of the individual. Standing in that arena in my Texas flag shirt and this cowboy hat.
Great hat!
Thank you. With so many other patriots selflessly dedicating their time, treasure, and talent in defense of liberty, I have never been more proud to be a Texan. Texas is united. We all know that. Despite the official message of unity scripted by the RNC, there are a lot of divisions within the Republican Party. Many of those divisions came to the fore during the convention, and I'll speak of them in their proper place. It's under the bad, just telling you. But those divisions serve to accentuate the unity of Texas. It's not that Texans agree on everything, but every Texan agrees that honesty, hard work, and fair play should be the rule. We are fortunate to have in Steve Monasteri a chairman who models these principles and leads by example. And in contrast to the national convention, our state convention was a model of fairness, respect, and decency. More than ever, Texas was a shining example of unity and diversity and strength and freedom. Limited government is making a comeback. About time. After 12 years, at least, more like 90 years of dramatically increasing the size of our government, Republicans and concerned citizens alike had enough. Almost every candidate and elected official at the RNC spoke of the need to reduce the size of our government and shrink our debt. Many of the speakers have even taken steps to do so. It's really kind of rare when their votes actually match up to their rhetoric, huh? And for the first time in many years, we are seeing an increase in politicians who want to decrease the government. God bless. Our platform is better than it ever has been. Because so many conservative states were able to get our strongest people on the platform committee, we now have a platform that broadly and consistently represents conservative values. We added key planks that will support American businesses and help preserve the American economy for our future. Planks like internet freedom and the establishment of a committee to explore sound money alternatives to our current fiat currency will promote the renewal of American business. Our representatives even have the courage to take a hard look at unfunded liabilities like Medicare and Medicaid and advocate that we transition gradually and responsibly to a fiscally sound and sustainable model. We've got to make these hard choices, folks. That's the good. Here's the bad. Power in the GOP is more centralized than it ever has been. Despite our best efforts to resist them, some significant changes made into the rules that will handicap the grassroots going forward. Two contentious rules Pastor Broden addressed were debated, and despite being modified somewhat, were ultimately passed. Rule 12 allows the RNC to change any rule for any reason with a 3/4 majority vote. It was originally drafted as 2/3, as you mentioned, and was changed to 3/4. It was actually Melinda Fredericks, the RPT vice chair, who led that charge, so we all need to send her a thank you. She worked hard. I understand that there are some good arguments in favor of Rule 12. I've talked to a lot of people about it, namely having the agility to change the rules to comply with changing election laws and things like this so we don't get caught. But I and most Texans have remained opposed to this rule. It gives too much power to too few. The RNC is a 168-person body comprised of chairmen, national committeemen, and national committeewomen from each state. And while each state is represented equally, the grassroots are not. As it was pointed out, we're now on equal footing with New Hampshire and Rhode Island. And Texas, just as a matter of fact, sends a lot more votes to Republicans and a lot more dollars to Republicans than Rhode Island. That's not equal representation. So, as we know, in Texas, right, we've suffered for a long time under disproportionate East Coast influence in the RNC, despite the fact that we give more money and more votes. This rule has just served to further alienate Texas and further remove power from the grassroots across the country. Exactly. We have conventions for a reason, at least in Texas we do. And we firmly believe that the entire body should be represented in drafting and approving changes to the rules that affect all of us. The idea that a few people in a faraway room get to make the rules for the rest of us is fundamentally opposed to a grassroots party. Rule 12 was opposed by Tea Party patriots and Liberty patriots alike. Michelle Malkin, Rush Limbaugh, Morton Blackwell, Ron Paul, Sarah Palin all argued against it. I argued against it. And I'm still against it. Rule 15, as it was changed, it was originally Rule 16, originally required that all states, including caucus states, hold a primary. The delegates would be proportionally bound to the results of that primary, and the delegates would be could be decredentialed by the candidate to whom they were bound. This rule, which was pushed by Mitt Romney's lawyer, Ben Ginsberg, he'll come up again, is designed to do nothing other than disenfranchise the grassroots and place more power in the hands of the powerful. It is an absolutely absurd idea and against everything our party believes in, to allow the RNC or any central party to tell the states how to select their delegates, and then, even worse, to exercise veto authority over those states and their duly elected delegates. Many have said the rule change was designed simply to prevent something like another Ron Paul campaign. He was the bogeyman here, from amassing so many delegates in the future. But let us remember that in 1976, the last time we had a brokered convention, it was precisely the duly elected, unbound delegates who victoriously nominated Reagan over Ford, forever changing the direction of the Republican Party and our nation, forever changing the direction of history by nominating a man who would play such a vital role in the defeat of communism. Were this rule in place in 1976, we would never have had a President Reagan. Were this rule in place in 2012, we would never have had the great additions to our platform that we had. Who knows what's going to happen with this rule in place in 2016? This rule centralizes in the RNC and in the candidates who are not even elected officials all the power. Someone campaigning for president should not have authority over a state's delegates. The latter are elected, the former are not. Moreover, this requirement to hold primaries and bind delegates to those primary results is not designed, as they say, to favor the will of the people, but to favor the candidates with the most money in their campaign coffers. We all know that primaries favor candidates who have the most money to spend on political advertisements, while caucuses favor candidates who appeal most to the interests of concerned and informed grassroots voters. Primaries favor money, caucuses favor hard work. Rule 15 favors money over morals. The future of our Republican Party is at stake with this rule. It was loudly opposed at the convention, and it must be continually opposed by us. I'm proud to say that as far as I could tell, every Texan, and certainly every Texan in this room I saw, did oppose it. Our representatives spotted in the Rules Committee and our delegates spotted on the floor, even though our mics were turned off. They were never even turned on. Our members of the RNC Rules Committee, Butch Davis and Melinda Frederick, spoke and acted heroically and in defense of the grassroots. I believe we all owe them our thanks and our gratitude. I really want y'all to call them or write them. I'm serious. They deserve it. The new rule, as it was passed, removes the ability of candidates to decertify the delegates, instead stating that if a delegate votes otherwise than he or she was bound to vote, that delegate would be de facto decertified. This is a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Still, we have in place the part of the rule enforcing proportional allocation of delegates, which continues the trend of rewarding the richest as opposed to the best candidates. We must continue to fight this rule. This didn't end in Tampa. It is our party. If our party is going to be about people's moral values as opposed to candidates' monetary values. This is a big fight. That was the bad. Now it gets ugly. It is extremely unfortunate that at a time when so many gather to express our disapproval of the current administration and our hopes for a better tomorrow, there were some in power who were so afraid of diversity of opinion that they tried to stifle any conflicting views. At a time when conservatives are fully united against our liberal big government administration, we did not need to be looking for enemies within. We could have embraced the differences among us and been stronger for it. For even in those differences, we are united in the conservative cause of smaller government, personal accountability, individual liberty, and economic opportunity. We are united in ousting Obama and winning in November. But alas, thank you, this real unity did not materialize. Some in the RNC would rather create an illusion of unity as opposed to doing the hard and humble work of actually creating unity. They would rather present a false and fragile 100% unity than a real and unstoppable 80% unity, forgetting the wisdom of President Reagan, who said that if we agree on 80% of things, then we are friends. And they certainly ran roughshod over Reagan's 11th commandment, for those of y'all who know what that is. Before the convention even began, Ben Ginsburg, Romney's lawyer, the villain, began work to unseat, that's Ginsburg, y'all, not Romney, just to be clear, began work to unseat duly elected delegates from numerous states, including Maine, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Oregon, and Massachusetts. Predictably, those were states with large numbers of delegates supporting Ron Paul. There was no attempt to hide the fact that these delegates were being unseated so as to prevent a nomination of Ron Paul from the floor. In my view, the grounds upon which these delegates' credentials were challenged were entirely bogus. But even if those challenges were valid, there is no good reason at all why the RNC would have proceeded as it did to have members from other states appoint new delegates, when they could easily have had Mainers appoint Mainers and Oklahomans appoint Oklahomans. But they did not, favoring instead to hand-select their own delegates. This blatant act of disenfranchising the states, voters, and delegations alarmed many in the arena and gave fuel to a scandal-ready media, leading to a backlash of humiliatingly bad press for the RNC, a walkout in protest by many delegates from the floor, and the decision of the Republican governor of Maine to boycott the convention entirely. None of this needed to happen. It was embarrassing, it was shameful, it was cowardly. In a time when we needed strength, these machinations only betrayed weakness. All of this was done simply to prevent a nomination from the floor of Ron Paul. and of the subsequent 15-minute speech to which he would then have been entitled. It didn't work. Supporters of Ron Paul got the signatures they needed to nominate Ron Paul anyway, and they submitted their nomination in accordance with the rules, and that nomination was summarily ignored. Now, I want to be perfectly clear here. I voted for Ron Paul in the primary, and I would happily vote for him for my president. But I didn't have a dog in this fight. As an alternate delegate, I was bound to vote for Mitt Romney. I gave my word, and I was in Tampa to represent CD 32, not Christopher Haley. Had I the chance to vote, it would have been to represent my CD by voting for Mitt Romney. I believe in principle over politics, and that a man's word is his bond, and that we ought to make our yeses yes and our noes noes.
Right.
So it's not about me as an alternate delegate wanting to vote for Ron Paul. But it is about me as a Republican voter who did vote for Ron Paul. And it's about millions of other Republican voters who voted for Ron Paul and who elected delegates to vote for Ron Paul, and whose votes and whose voices were taken away by the RNC. Now, whether one agrees or disagrees with Dr. Paul is not the issue. We all agree that our voices count, that fairness counts, that representative government counts. And unfortunately, there are some in the RNC who only think that winning counts. But we all know that cheaters never win. And so, instead of what should have been a resounding victory for Mitt Romney, at a time of great enthusiasm for our party and our country, we had protests and divisions and shouting and bitterness. This could all have been easily avoided. Had the RNC allowed the duly elected delegates to be seated, Ron Paul would have been nominated, everyone's votes would have been counted, and as one Republican party, we would have nominated Mitt Romney for president. Yeah, we were going to nominate Mitt Romney. While I was there, I met people, delegates even from our own state, who asked me, knowing who I voted for, why did you Ron Paulers even show up? You knew you weren't going to win. Well, that's easy. We didn't show up to win. We showed up to be heard. We showed up because we're just as opposed to Barack Obama as anyone. We showed up because it's our generation that's going to have to pay back this debt. It's our generation fighting and dying all over the world. It's our generation who are saddled with college loans and can't find work. And it's our generation that will have to live with the decisions being made today. We showed up because it's our country too, and we love it as much as anyone. We showed up to be heard, not to win. And our voices were silenced anyways. But Ron Paul supporters weren't the only ones who were silenced. I watched on multiple occasions as at least half of the arena was silenced. When the vote came on the credentials report, the one that decertified half of Maine's duly elected delegates, I watched as Texans and Mainers and many others objected, and I saw their objections ignored. I watched as Texans led the arena in chanting point of order, and I saw the Romney whips in a moment of heartbreaking irony stir up the crowd chanting USA to drown out the democratic process and the valid objections. And I could only look on as RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, having succeeded in stripping dozens of delegates of their credentials, ignored the delegations, slammed the gavel down, and simply said, "We have to get back to the order of business." And I was shocked. Then, when it came time for the now infamous vote on the rules, which I hope you've all watched footage of, I watched as John Boehner called for the vote, and I heard the ayes and the nays. And I can tell you that no one who was there can honestly say that the vote was clearly one way or another. But that didn't matter anyway, because as I watched as John Boehner shamelessly and brazenly read the pre-scripted result of the vote off the teleprompter. And I saw, for the first time in my life, what Soviet-style voting looks like. Those are harsh words, I know. But like you, I do not take my freedom lightly. Thomas Jefferson said that the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance. In Tampa, we were vigilant and we were ignored. That means that we must even be more vigilant. It means that while our immediate efforts are focused on removing Barack Obama from office, we must not forget about the enemies of freedom within our own party. We must demand from Reince Priebus and John Boehner who have revealed bangs beneath their sheep's clothing, an apology and an explanation. And failing that, we must work tirelessly to remove them from office. That's the good and the bad and the ugly. But there's one thing that was more important still, and that's the hope. Because despite everything I just said, y'all notice the ugly was a lot longer than the good, probably. I love Tampa brimming with hope for the future of our party and our country. Not because either are working well, but precisely because neither is working at all. And because people are realizing this more and more every day, and they are not going to take it anymore. Republicans are ready to take their country back, and they realize now that the first step to doing this is taking our party back. The fake unity of the RNC failed, but I found a real unity in Tampa. I found grassroots conservatives, Tea Partiers, Ron Paulers, supporters of every candidate who ever ran or thought of running, united in common resolve to restore our country to glory. I met men and women united in their respect for American traditions and institutions, who were willing to hear each other out and instead of tearing each other down, work to build each other up. I met cowboys and hippies who could come together and discuss the Constitution. Everyone I met, y'all can wonder which one I am. Everyone I met knew that our country is going down the wrong path, and though we weren't all agreed on exactly the way forward, we were all agreed that before we can go forward, we need to get back to our roots. And that's what the Republican Party is about. That's what I learned in Tampa. It's about the grassroots, it's about the Constitution, about freedom of conscience, about economic opportunity, about defending life and promoting virtue. It's about fixing our country from the bottom up and not the top down. And that's just what we're going to do, because the people in Tampa convinced me that we can do it. So let's get out there and win in November, but let's win in 2016 too. And let's win in 2020. The only way we're going to do that is if we get this party healthy again. So thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America, and I know that God's blessed Texas.